S'il vous plaît. Je vais vous demander, s'il vous plaît, une petite minute d'attention, parce que ça ne nous a pas échappé qu'on avait quelques bières de la brasserie de Kernel qui est située à Londres. On n'a pas que les bières, on a aussi l'homme qui fait les bières. Ouais. Qui est Evin, qui est ici, qui est irlandais, qui parle plutôt anglais, mais un peu français. On va faire comme il le sent. Je vais lui demander si tu veux bien nous dire quelques mots sur la brasserie et sur une bière ou deux. Je te laisse la parole. Merde. Et tout d'abord, surtout, merci Evin d'être avec nous ce soir. Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you everybody for coming out tonight. It's yeah, it's a real pleasure to see so many people here on a quiet Tuesday. I've never given a talk like this, so excuse my incoherence. Who am I supposed to be talking to? There need to be three of me pointing in different directions.
Just speak loudly, and that will be.
The main reason I don't do many of these things is because I'm very nervous, I'm very shy, and part of, I think, what we try to do at the Kernel is to let the beer do most of the speaking for itself. Yeah, we don't do any advertising or marketing. Our labels are supposed to be simple and clean, and all they're supposed to say is that it's what's inside that's important. I don't think I can add anything to that. Well said. We've been brewing in London for 5 years. I've had a few funny conversations today about that being really young and also that being really old. Beer both in England and here. But how do you judge an age? How old do you feel? I have no idea. But in terms of most beers, at least most of the ones we have tonight and most of what we make, age is really important. It's all about freshness. So the essence of what we want in any of the pale beers, the table beer, the pale ales, the IPAs, they're an American inspiration in terms of their character. It's all about the hops, and hops need to be drunk fresh. So everything we have here tonight is a couple of weeks old, and don't let them get any older. Our world is very simple. We make pale beers, dark beers, and sour beers. Most everything fits into those three categories, and there's very little difference between them, perhaps, except for the different levels of alcohol you get. Pale beers, focused on the hops. The dark beers, it's mainly malt. So the characters of the porters and the stouts we have, old English recipes. This is part of what it means for us to be brewing in London, is to be engaging with recipes that we've taken from the archives of other brewers in London that are long since extinct. London used to be a centre of the brewing world, and when we started brewing there were 9 breweries going, only one of which had any history, Fuller's. Now there are 73 breweries in London, I think. Something like that, yeah. And it's an exciting time to be brewing there. But it's still important for us to feel the relationship with something that's gone in the past that we never experienced because we weren't drinking beer in the 1800s. But to also feel that there's so much new excitement about craft beer these days. It's really important to feel that it goes back beyond the first appearance of Citra 3 years ago. You know, it's hard to imagine pale ales without Citra or Mosaic, but you know, Mosaic is only 2 years old. But yet there is a tradition that goes back for hundreds of years that's really important for us to try and engage with in whichever way we can. And it's important to realize that we take a recipe, it's a very simple thing. But they were drinking really good beer those days. That's why we have a tradition now that's worth continuing with and worth being a part of. There's a couple of beers tonight that we brought along that we don't usually let outside the brewery. These are some of our barrel-aged things that we've been starting to play with. We have a Saison aged in red Burgundy barrels. These sort of beers are more about, I suppose, our sense of terroir. So bugs, yeast, different bacteria, different processes that don't come along in a beer like this. When you make a pale ale or an IPA or a stout, you have an idea of what the beer you want to make is. You try to keep the outside world out. You don't want any air, you don't want any oxygen, you don't want any light, you don't want any bugs. All those things will make the beer that you want to make not the way it should be. Barrels allow the outside world in. They're open, they're breathing, they're interacting with their environment. And so for something like the Saison we have here today, it's just an expression of what it means to kind of grow and develop and mature slowly in a railway arch in southeast London. Yeah, I'm not going to take up too much of more of your time. I'll be around if anybody wants to come and ask me questions. I can deal with things much more easily on a face-to-face level.
Thank you very much.